Cow's Head. What's the scariest story you've ever heard? T, a well-known enthusiast of the occult, loved sharing scary stories in front of an audience. After finishing his stories, he often got asked this question. I know a lot of scary stories, but if I had to pick the scariest one. That's an interesting question. Driven by curiosity, T decided to search for the scariest story not just in Japan but all over the world, dedicating years to his quest. After several years, T contacted his close friend O. T claimed to have found the scariest story of all. The story was called The Cow's Head. However, this story was cursed, and the only way to tell it to someone else was to speak it directly within 3 days. If more than 3 days passed or it was shared in any other form, misfortune would befall the person who knew the story. If you hear this, oh, you will be cursed too. Do you still want to hear it? O hesitated, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he agreed to meet T. The next day, O waited for T at the agreed cafe, but T never showed up. T has been missing since then, and his whereabouts are still unknown. The Cow's Head is known as the scariest urban legend. It's not the content of the story but the fact that it's known as the scariest story that makes this legend so famous. The curse or death that follows hearing it adds to the story's infamy and is a key factor in its spread. What is the scariest story you know? A convenient road. My relative A.A. Pseudonym bought a house in a rural area where owning a car is essential for convenience. Public transportation is minimal, with buses running perhaps once an hour, and even the nearest bus stop requires a bit of a walk. The nearest train station is quite a distance away and difficult to reach. The area is sparsely populated, and many wondered why they would buy a house in such a location. However, A's family didn't find it inconvenient as long as they had a car. Then, a major construction project led to the opening of a new road in that area. A's family had heard about the planned road when they purchased the land, and it was a factor in their decision. With just one new road, the ease of travel improved dramatically. While a car was still necessary, the new road made commuting between the peaceful, nature-rich outskirts and the city center much more convenient. What once seemed like an inconvenient location turned into a desirable place that anyone would envy. I visited them several times and was amazed at how much easier travel had become with the new road. A while later, shocking news arrived. A and their family were in an accident and they all passed away. The family was out as usual, driving on the new road, when a speeding oncoming car crossed the median and crashed head-on into their car. The impact was severe, and everyone involved died instantly. Happiness and misfortune are unpredictable. The future is always uncertain. Beyond the GPS. This is a strange story I experienced a few years ago during the summer. Every year, since our student days, my friends and I would go on a trip in summer or autumn. That year, we decided to travel in the summer. The usual trio, including myself and 2 friends, planned to stay in a cabin in a forest in the countryside. On the day of the trip, we let the friend most experienced with driving take the wheel, and after a few hours of driving, we reached our destination. By the time we arrived, it was already evening, and we were starving. We quickly set up a barbecue with the food we bought on the way and enjoyed our meal. As we chatted and relaxed, the surroundings grew dark. Despite it being summer and the sun setting late, it was completely dark by 8 p.m. We decided to head back to the cabin to rest, but then someone suggested we should go to a hot spring and unwind. On the first day of the trip, we were already exhausted, and soaking in a hot spring sounded perfect. However, since we were staying in a cabin and not a ryokan, there was no hot spring on site. After a quick search online, we found a promising hot spring a short drive away. We packed minimal belongings and set off in the car. In an unfamiliar place, we had to rely entirely on the GPS. The forest was dark with few streetlights. After driving for a while, we reached a regular road and were chatting happily when suddenly, "Turn right." The GPS abruptly gave this single command. Normally, a GPS would say something like, "Turn right in 300 meters." The sudden "turn right" startled us. We thought it might be because the area was so deserted. We couldn't turn immediately, so we backed up a bit and then took the turn as instructed. The road turned into a narrow mountain path where we could only go straight. We joked about what would happen if an oncoming car appeared as we continued, but soon we began to feel uneasy. The forest grew denser, and we seemed to be moving farther from civilization. We started to doubt if there was really a hot spring ahead. The car became silent, and the tension was palpable. We thought about turning back, but the road was too narrow for a U-turn. We stopped the car to see if we could turn around, and when we checked, we were shocked. The road's edge was a cliff. The hot spring was no longer a concern. No one spoke, but we all felt scared. We exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to do. With no other option, we decided to move forward and find a wider spot to turn around safely. We didn't know what lay ahead, but we felt like we were heading into an uninhabited area, as no cars had passed us for a while. Slowly driving in the dark, we finally found a large space. Relieved, we decided to U-turn there. As we moved towards it, the car's headlights revealed a decayed, abandoned building. At that moment, "You have arrived," the GPS announced before shutting off. Abandoning the idea of the hot spring, we headed back to the cabin. That eerie experience remains a favorite story among us. The chilling fear we felt that night is unforgettable. It felt as though something from the abandoned building had called us there. The Headless Rider. To verify the rumors of ghosts appearing at a famous haunted spot, a couple drove there. However, no supernatural occurrences happened, and they grew bored and decided to head back. Nothing happened. It wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, that's usually how it goes. They drove away, chatting idly, when a light appeared from the opposite lane. It was a single light, likely from a motorcycle. As expected, they passed by a bike, but after that, the boyfriend fell silent and began to accelerate. "Hey, that's dangerous." As the girlfriend glanced at her boyfriend in the driver's seat, she saw his face had turned pale as he gripped the steering wheel tightly. They eventually reached a main road and pulled over to the side. Surprised by her boyfriend's reaction, the girlfriend asked, "What's wrong?" He replied, "The person on that bike we passed didn't have a head." Stories of headless ghosts have been whispered around the world for centuries, making them a popular topic in folklore. Among these, sightings of the Headless Rider are widespread across many regions, becoming a classic ghost story. In reality, there have been tragic accidents where motorcyclists hit wires strung across roads, resulting in their decapitation. The movie Madstone features a scene where a rider's head is cut off by a piano wire stretched across the road, which further fueled these rumors. Additionally, the phenomenon of riders wearing black helmets at night, making their heads blend into the darkness, might have contributed to this urban legend. The vanishing taxi. This is a strange story I experienced. One night, I went out drinking alone. By the time I realized it, it was already late at night, and I had no way to get home. I guess I'll have to catch a taxi. Just as I thought that, a taxi passed by, so I flagged it down and got in. "To XX, please." Got it. For a while, the ride was silent, which was fine. But eventually, the taxi driver started talking about his life. This can be annoying. I wasn't interested at all, but since it was just the two of us, I had no choice but to listen. After a while, the driver asked, "So, how have you been lately?" Feeling it was bothersome, I ended up sharing my own troubles. At that time, my work and personal life were both going terribly, and I was quite depressed. The destination I gave to the driver was a place known for being a suicide spot. In other words, I had planned to end my life that night. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. I started crying as I talked, unable to stop myself even though I knew any normal driver would probably be freaked out. But this driver listened seriously and quietly, nodding as I spoke. He even said, "Life has its hardships, but there are joys too. Hang in there, kid." His empathetic listening and encouraging words made me feel strangely lighter. It's often said that sharing your troubles with a stranger can help, and I guess I just needed someone to open up to. "We're here." The taxi stopped in front of my house. It wasn't the destination I had given, but I felt relieved to be home. Feeling grateful to the driver, I glanced at his name tag and saw a familiar name. But I couldn't quite place it. "You're not supposed to be here yet. Get out, get out." Huh. Suddenly, the driver urged me to get out. I did so, and the taxi drove off and then vanished into the darkness. It was unbelievable, but strangely, I wasn't scared. I realized who the driver was. It was my late grandfather. He used to be a taxi driver. He must have come to check on me. I hadn't recognized him while in the taxi, but as soon as I got out, memories flooded back. Memories of my grandfather, like testing if soap really stings your eyes in the bath, watching TV like it was a movie theater in a dark room, and sneaking out late at night for drives. He had always been very fond of me. Knowing that my grandfather was still looking out for me from heaven has kept me from falling into despair, and I'm still hanging in there. The responsive auto brake. I commute to work by car, which takes about an hour each way. Normally, I finish work around 7 p.m. without much overtime, but there was one time when a series of troubles kept me at the office until around 9 p.m. On my way home that night, the usual highway was heavily congested due to an accident. Eager to get home quickly, I decided to take a side road to avoid the traffic. This route went through a residential area with many intersections and poor visibility. This is a tricky place to drive, I thought, paying extra attention as I went along. I approached an intersection, came to a complete stop, checked for safety, and just as I was about to accelerate, beep, 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 beep. An alarm blared loudly, and the car's auto brake engaged, bringing the car to a sudden halt. It seemed to have detected an obstacle ahead. Startled, I got out to check but found nothing unusual around the car. What triggered it? I wondered. Thinking it might be a sensor malfunction, I got back in and drove home. About a month later, there was a farewell party at work. I left at 9 p.m. and once again, the highway was jammed. Although I could have taken the main road home, I was exhausted and wanted to get back quickly, so I opted for the side road again. Remember that strange incident on this road, I recalled as I approached the same intersection. Suddenly, the alarm sounded again, and the car came to an abrupt stop. Experiencing the same thing twice at the same place scared me. I got out and thoroughly checked the surroundings but found nothing out of the ordinary. Thinking my car might have an issue, I took it to the dealer over the weekend. However, the diagnostics showed no problems. Despite the car being in good condition, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling from the incident. Living with this mystery was unsettling. Determined to find the cause, I decided to take the side road intentionally to see if it would happen again. But no matter how many times I drove the same route, the auto brake did not engage. Maybe it was just a coincidence, I thought. Eventually, as I took the side road less frequently, I forgot about the strange occurrences. Several months passed, and one evening after working late again, I encountered another highway traffic jam. I instinctively took the side road, now quite familiar with it. Beep, 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 beep. As I approached the same intersection, the car's auto brake engaged once more, stopping the car abruptly for the third time. Stunned, I got out and stood in disbelief. An older man, hearing the sudden brake, walked over. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I think so. My car just braked on its own." "This is the third time it's happened here," I explained. The man's eyes widened in surprise. About a year and a half ago, at this very time, a man on a bicycle was hit by a car and died at this intersection. The car was a black sedan like mine, and the driver fled the scene. The culprit was never found. I realized that I usually reached this intersection at around the same time every evening. Whether it was the man's spirit or something else, my car seemed to respond to an unseen presence. Chills ran down my spine, and I decided to avoid that road from then on. Choosing safer routes is part of responsible driving, and I hope it helps reduce accidents. The Midnight Drive. This happened when I was in my 20s. I went on a drive with my then boyfriend. He was a very spontaneous person, often going out for drives at midnight without any specific destination in mind. He said, "The roads are clearer at night, and it's easier to visit tourist spots." That evening, he simply said, "Let's go to Yamanashi," and we set off around sunset. It was a totally unplanned drive, with no destination or accommodation in mind. Being young, I felt a sense of excitement and adventure. We finally reached Yamanashi, but as we entered a certain city, we found ourselves on a mountain road. It was pitch dark since it was past 11 p.m. and there were no houses around. We thought we might have to drive until dawn. Then, we saw an old sign that read Ryokan Inn off the road. We were surprised but decided to check it out. We parked the car on the side road and walked towards the building. It was indeed an old wooden inn. The entrance was clean and well lit, with a soft orange glow coming from behind the frosted glass door. Maybe it's abandoned, we thought, but as we got closer, we saw a shadow behind a drum can near the entrance. I mustered up the courage to call out, "Excuse me, are you from this inn?" The shadow seemed to glance at us, but then disappeared behind the drum can. Curious, we approached, but there was no one there. It felt strange because we were sure we saw someone. Instinctively, I felt it was a ghost and told my boyfriend, "Let's get out of here." But he didn't believe in ghosts at all and said, "If there's someone here, let's ask if we can stay." Almost in tears, I watched him walk to the frosted glass door and knock. After a moment, he came running back. There's something there. Someone pressed up against the door. He was shouting in panic. We rushed to start the car, but just like in a horror movie, the engine wouldn't start right away. Panicking, we finally got the car started and drove off. In horror movies, there's often a scene where the ghost appears in the back seat or sticks to the windows. I kept my eyes forward, reciting prayers in my head. Suddenly, he said, I can't see behind us. When I checked the rearview mirror, I saw that the trunk had somehow opened. I was terrified, thinking maybe a ghost had gotten in. We drove for a while before stopping to close the trunk, then immediately headed back to Tokyo. The next morning at the gas station, the attendant pointed out, "There's a lot of mud on the back of your car." Shocked, I saw that the trunk area was covered in muddy fingerprints. Had a ghost tried to get in? The thought was terrifying. Since that night, he never went on reckless midnight drives again, and we broke up 6 months later. This remains an unforgettable, chilling experience for me. The car that ran a red light. This is a story about my friend who was driving one day. As he was driving down a major road, he approached an intersection where the light turned from green to yellow. Thinking he could make it, he continued through the intersection. To his disbelief, a car that had been waiting at the red light suddenly pulled out in front of him, causing a collision. My friend hadn't expected a car to run a red light, and since he was speeding up, the impact severely damaged his vehicle. Fortunately, he only suffered minor bruises, though the police remarked that it was a miracle he was unharmed given the severity of the crash. The car that ran the red light had its side damaged, but the 2 women inside were uninjured. Since the accident was clearly caused by their running the red light, my friend got out to speak with them. However, the women were on their phones, ignoring him even when he knocked on their window. Puzzled and frustrated, my friend waited for the police to arrive. When they did, he began explaining the situation. Just then, a black luxury car pulled up, and a man with a rather intimidating appearance stepped out. Simultaneously, the women got out of their car. It seemed they had connections to some shady individuals. My friend explained to the police. That car ran the red light. But the woman retorted, "What? You ran the red light?" With no evidence to prove his side, a heated argument ensued. However, my friend was more concerned about the silent pressure from the intimidating man. The argument ended unresolved, and it was decided they would discuss it later. When my friend later asked the police, "That guy looks like he might be with the Yakuza," the police replied, "That's likely. Contact us if anything happens." My friend knew it was going to be a tough battle, but being strong-willed, he decided he wouldn't back down. The negotiations continued over the phone, and the claims from the other side were outrageous. Taking advantage of the lack of evidence, they pressured him, saying, "It's your fault, so we're not paying. In fact, you owe us money for causing the accident." For about a month, my friend paid for his car's disposal and medical bills out of pocket while trying to resolve the issue. However, the breakthrough came when the dashcam footage from a truck stopped at the scene revealed the other car had indeed run the red light. With this evidence, the other party quickly changed their tune, admitting fault and covering all the costs. One of the men even told my friend, "You've got some guts." This has now become a story my friend tells with a laugh. But he often reflects, "If it weren't for that dashcam footage, I would have had to accept the blame." Interestingly, my friend's mother later told him that at the exact time of the accident, a family altar tablet at their home suddenly cracked. He wonders if his ancestors might have been protecting him, allowing him to escape unharmed from such a serious accident. An encounter with a terrifying lady. This happened when I was still single. I used to commute to work by car every day, as I lived in a rural area with little traffic. One day, something unexpected occurred. As I was driving to work as usual, I found myself stuck behind a car that was crawling along. To make matters worse, it was driving right down the middle of the road. In the countryside, there wasn't a marked center line, but this was an extremely poor example of driving. Realizing I wouldn't make it to work on time at this pace, I decided to overtake the car. As soon as I did, the car sped up and started chasing me aggressively. Approaching an intersection, I saw the traffic light turn red. Worried, I stopped my car. The car behind me screeched to a halt, and a furious woman got out, shouting, "Don't you know it's dangerous with children in the car?" I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out who was really driving dangerously. I planned to turn right, but glancing in my mirror, I saw that the woman intended to turn right as well. Feeling too frightened to continue in the same direction, I chose to go straight instead and took an alternative route to work. Having had my driver's license for less than 2 years, this was a genuinely terrifying experience for me. It was a moment when I truly understood the fearsome side of some people. The chasing light. This happened about 25 years ago when I was a university student. My friend, a car enthusiast, had just bought a new Skyline GTR and invited me for a drive away from the city. We drove up a mountain road and stopped near the summit to take a break. It was already past 1 a.m., and we decided to head down the mountain and grab some ramen before going home. Since it was late and there were no other cars on the road, my friend started to show off his car's speed, accelerating rapidly. Suddenly, we saw in the rearview mirror a vehicle approaching us at an incredible speed. Not wanting to be overtaken, my friend sped up even more. As the vehicle got closer, we realized it wasn't a car, it had only one light, like a motorcycle. But then my friend said, "That's not a light. It's a face." He warned me not to look back, but curiosity got the best of me, and I turned around. Sure enough, there was a single light getting closer, and it looked like a face. Terrified, my friend drove even faster. The light got so close that it felt like it was right behind us, almost inside the car. Finally, we reached the city lights, and the chasing light suddenly vanished. We had managed to escape. The next day, we decided to return to the same mountain road during daylight. At the spot where we had seen the light, we found numerous flowers placed there. It seemed like a warning from someone who had died in an accident at that spot. This was the first true encounter with the supernatural for both my friend and me.